and Dice Shame stream, everybody, with freaking Harlan Guthrie. Is
We
you.
got him? He's here?
He's here. Oh my god.
Oh, right. Yeah, I'm here. I didn't know if you wanted me or well, hold on one second. Let me grab him. What? Oh, it's for you. Hey, hold on one second. Who is this? It's stuff. Does she want to talk to me? I don't think so, actually. Fine. Bye. Okay, well,
Honestly,
sorry, Red.
it
He's so
would
sensitive.
it would honestly be crazy to talk to Red off stream. I would love that so much, but that would
Sure, we'll
probably
bring
be
him in the end, and you can ask him any questions directly. But I'll warn you, he's gonna answer shifty and annoyingly, like he does every time. I was gonna say Rob, but I guess Jack asks him a question. Rob Jack, the first of many confusions. But yeah, thank
Harlan.
you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm so happy you're here. That would be freaking amazing. I would love to. I'd love to interview Red. That'd be
Do it. We'll
hilarious.
we'll end the stream with it. It'll be fun.
That'd be great. Okay. Well, we have a couple people in chat, but who cares? I just want to start asking questions. Um,
Aw,
yeah.
let's do it.
So what drew you to wanting to play a tabaxi and a ranger? Are there any inspirations or motivations behind? Sorry, I'm very excited.
No, don't
Behind
worry. I'm
Red's personality and character?
I love that. Great question. Listen, this is going to be fun. This is going to be chill. We're going to be friends. It's just going to be chatting. And I just want to say before I answer your question, I love this and I love you doing this and I love how passionate you are about the show. It is no joke. It, listen, we've been doing Dice Shame for like a long time now, right? But the idea that people really cared about it or really connected with it was so foreign to
What?
Joe and myself, and but it was because it's just there. It doesn't have that tangibility, and I'm telling you, your presence has been such. It has such a positive ripple effect, not just throughout the community, obviously, but in Dice Shame. Like the idea that like Nersal and Rob and Joe and myself and even Alex all now have this voice in the community that's like, this is awesome. It's given us so much inspiration and so much more motivation to be like let's keep trying, let's do better, let's be tighter and all that kind of stuff. So
Oh my
before I answer your question,
gosh.
which I will answer, I just got to say thank you because you're killing it and it's doing so much for our enjoyment of all of this.
I thank you so much. I'm so happy to do it. Shame is a fucking excellent podcast, and I'm really happy that it inspires you as well.
It
Or my
does.
art inspires. Yeah.
All of everything you're doing inspire. I mean, listen, even Alex Guthrie, like I've many times said, and like non-jokingly, that I'm almost more passionate about Dice Shame than I am about Malevolent because, truth be told, I put so much more work into Dice Shame. So it when it gets recognized, it makes me feel so much joy and so much appreciation for the
I
people that are appreciating it. So anyway, okay. That aside, I did forget the question because I needed to get that out.
That's fine.
It was why it's a backseat,
Yes.
basically, and the personality. Love that question.
And Ranger.
And Ranger. Okay, I can answer all those perfectly honestly. So Red, actually, I played him or his archetype in a game before Dice Shame. So myself,
Whoa.
Joe, Chris Visso, who's part of our Invictus streams, although his real name is Chris Charbonneau, but he won't care because he's not going to watch this, and he's not going to get doxxed. And Justin all played a campaign of Into the Abyss, and Joe ran it for us, tabletop style, and we did it with maps and markers and all that kind of stuff. And we had campaign calendars and we had all this kind of stuff. And Justin played a Kenku, and Chris played a Goliath, I believe,
Whoa.
and I played a Tabaxi on Joe's pitch. She was like, "Listen, I know you like to be very strategic, and I know you like to kind of move a lot in the battle, and Tabaxis have more movement speed, but additionally they can climb, so you can use verticality." And I was sold. Tabaxi was the number one because of that, but I didn't like the cat angle. I didn't like the
Oh.
like chic kind of, like I don't know, just I'm not a big animal person,
Fair.
ironically.
Honestly, same.
So I was just kind of like, yeah, and there's kind of like there's a whole subsect of people who really like anthropomorphize and like cutify like animals. It's not my bag. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it, but I'm gonna do it like a fox twist. And this is for our home game, and she was like, that's great. But I played him as a rogue,
Oh,
and
interesting.
yeah, and I didn't have his voice really. I was just kind of like blah 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 blah. I don't even think I did a British accent. I just kind of played him more serious, a little bit more dark. In fact, the original like profile picture I have him is like this really like dark faced fox type character with a hood
Neat. That's so neat.
and yeah. And then as we played, I really hated rogue. I love rogues, and if Red ever dies, I'll probably switch to a rogue. But I hated rogues for the utility of that campaign, and also because I found I didn't enjoy melee fighting as much. So I was playing a ranged rogue, and a lot of the abilities didn't really help that much to be doing the kind of damage I wanted. So I did a rogue ranger mix. So I think I did 3 levels of rogue, and then I started doing ranger, and I really liked the ranger kind of features, but hated the way they were like implemented in the rules as written handbook. So I went to the Unearthed Arcana, and this was around the time that they released the Unearthed Arcana Ranger changes,
Mm,
which is what Red plays in Dice Shame.
yeah.
And I went to Joe and I was like, these Ranger rules are so much cooler because they gave way more utility to what I thought was so cool about a Ranger, which is like, this is my enemy. This is who I hunt.
Yeah.
And that to me is like a cool concept.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's fucking awesome. Can I run with that? And she was like, totally. So I printed out the Unearthed Arcana, and then as that game kind of fizzled out because Chris is a teacher and he had to go back to school, and then Justin and Joe and I were driving down to Gen Con, ironically with Rob, because Rob, and he'll say this too, he was not like the first choice for Dice Shame. He was not the person that we were like, oh, we need Rob in this. Which is not to say anything about Rob, because Rob will also attest to me saying him being in the show has been like the best accidental surprise ever. I think Rob adds so much, especially in like conflicting personalities, which obviously we'll talk about. But
Yeah.
or hope we talk about, I should say. But anyway, so we were originally planning that it would be Joe would run and I would play and Justin would play and our friend Chris would fill the Rob slot. And then my brother Alex, obviously, because he's the wild card and fucking I love him and I want to bring him in anything.
Yeah.
And Chris couldn't do it. And that's kind of what got Robin. But anyway, so that was the idea of starting out with the Tabaxi was frankly the movement speed. And then
That's
it
such an
all,
interesting detail to latch on to suddenly
yeah.
become Red, who a lot of people have said is like the best example of a tabaxi out there, you know?
Well, and I think like and Joan knows it too because I think she knows how my brain works because I play Red very very frivolously, but I absolutely play extremely tactically, like almost
Hmm.
to an annoying degree. Like my turns are relatively quick, but I'm very much abusing or using the landscape. Like I will get back, I will climb a tree. Like Red does not get hit often, and
No.
that's not just
Yeah.
for rolls. I constantly am like pulling myself out of combat and removing myself and knowing when to retreat. So I wanted a character that was like kind of stupid, low int but high wisdom. And to me Ranger fit that because Rangers are all about kind of the intuitive ideology of like understanding the way the water works, but not necessarily caring that it's H2O. You know what I mean? Like to me,
Yeah.
those are, and that's kind of how I try to play Red. Not always successfully, obviously, because sometimes he's too smart and way too unwise. But
I think that
yeah.
maybe his lack of wisdom is more for like bits sometimes or like character conflicts. And to me,
Oh,
I feel like his wisdom is more like nature and combat mechanical kind of
well,
wisdom.
ultimately, at the end of the day, I'm always gonna also do the thing that is most entertaining.
Yeah.
Like I'll like if Red eating the berry is more interesting than not eating the berry, guess what? Red's fucking eating the berry, even if it doesn't make sense. Because it makes great content.
Yeah.
And that's the one thing that I love about Alex Guthrie too. Like he is the like the far end of that spectrum. Like he's the one that will always eat the berry, whether or not it makes a good story. He just does it. I remember my brother. So we had this thing in high school called theater sports, which was like improv, like live improv, and they would do it over lunchtime. And he was one of the theater sport troupe characters. And I remember going. I didn't go often, and funnily enough, people would say, "Oh, you should try it." I was far too nervous for it. I am not that kind of performer. I don't enjoy it. Now
Mm.
maybe if I'm more confident, but I never touched it, never did it. I tried auditioning once and I got really nervous halfway through and just it was a bad experience. But Alex has this like, he doesn't think that way. And I remember being to one of the theater sports you know, performances or whatever, and it's like whose line is it anyway? And they're throwing out names and stuff like that. And there was this one scene, and it was a doctor's office, and all of the players, there's like 10 of them or whatever, they're all standing off the stage. The stage is empty, and then they all walk in as they have ideas, and the idea was kind of just a dud. It was like I think it was a morgue or something like that,
Mm.
and there's like this awkward silence, and none of the players are walking out, and you can kind of see their hands maybe pointing at each other, trying to figure out what to do, and the stage is just empty, and the audience is waiting, and Alex, my brother, launches himself out of the side stage into a prone position
Oh my
and
gosh.
lands on his back and like skids into the center of the stage as a cadaver.
Oh my
And then,
gosh.
but, but that's it. And then the audience erupts into laughter because first off, the comedic timing and the physical nature of his entry was amazing. But second off, and this is what I love about Alex, why a cadaver? You can't add anything to the scene with a cadaver. Like a cadaver can't talk. A cadaver can't
That's you
improvise.
have one move.
But he knew he had to be in the scene, and he knew he had to do something. And so rather than walk in saying, "Okay, we need to look at he plays the body. And that to me is like the example I always go to when I think of his ability to like just be anything that needs to happen and say anything that needs to happen. It's like the perfect representation of him as a character. And man, the show would not be anything without him. He's way too fucking valuable.
Oh my gosh, I need to recover from that.
Oh, you're telling me. We were dying laughing. It was so good. It always sticks in my head as like a theater sport memory too.
Oh man. Yeah, that's excellent. Oh, okay. Yeah. So yeah, I really appreciate I feel like Red and Doran both have that vibe of like pushing the scene forward,
Yeah.
maybe. Yeah.
Well,
Whereas
100%.
Jack and Mario are more of a reactionary kind of improv people.
And it's funny too because there's a lot of like orchestrating that comes into that and like deciding of like who to split them up and how and what to give people to do it and because it takes all types to make a really fascinating show and
Mhm.
episodes. I think everyone can attest to all of the iterations are interesting in their own way. But like it's a lot of pressure and onus to kind of intuitively feel out like a story from nothing. And that's why like Red and Doran's uh long night episode where they're in Silvery Moon,
Mhm. Yeah.
is very much action set piece, and we ran it with Joe obviously, but it was much more like improv heavy. Like it was very much like let's just do wacky thing to wacky thing to wacky thing, and it ended up feeling really cohesive. And that's also years and years of doing Invictus, which is super just improv based, and there's really nothing, and we have a good rapport, Alex and I.
Yeah.
And versus say Justin's episode, which was way more structured and recorded over much longer time and ended up having to be kind of really cut down,
Mm.
which it's great and tonally way more like in line with what he needed to kind of get through in that episode. But just indicative of kind of the story structure needing to change based on like even Justin was very much a needed a push and moreover something to drive towards to kind of be actively engaged in the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Okay. That
And
makes
then
sense.
Jack as well, he had kind of his detective stuff like that, but it was still kind of like a point place, like here's the next point, here's the next point, here's the next point, and stuff like that too. Because yeah, there's like passive players and active players, and passive players can be put into active situations, and active players can be forced to be passive. You know what I mean? But
Mhm.
kind of playing with all those pieces and making sure it feels rewarding is the constant kind of challenge of telling a story, not playing RPGs, because playing an RPG doesn't really matter as long as everyone's having fun. But telling a story is where it gets tough because when you cut it up, it has to kind of feel cohesive.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's not the like it's not the structure of D&D to have perfect cohesion. But whatever, I want to move on to
No.
the next question.
And
Uh,
and it's funny too because there's been so many like heads have been butt behind the scenes of Dice Shame and outside of Dice Shame because of stuff like that too. Like the idea of, balancing that line between what is enjoyable and what is like necessary for the show. And at the end of the day, all the players and the GM we all know that the bottom line is like, well, it's a podcast. Like, and there's been many times that all of us have said, okay, well, what do we need from this scene? Like maybe my feelings don't matter. What are we actually trying to accomplish here? And that all gets pushed aside to see the greater goal. And sometimes it's the opposite where we spend an hour trying to find the 5-minute piece that ends up feeling like we completed that scene fucking finally. Like the slug scene that you animated, which is so cool, by the way.
oh, thanks. I loved animating it. Awesome. So, how do you get in character for Red? Are there like any cornerstones or centerpieces to his character that helps you role play him?
Hmm.
Or is he like very natural to play based off your own personality?
No, he's very natural, I think. I don't have to get into character with him. In fact, I think sometimes it's difficult to be out of character with him. In fact, I think we were recording yesterday and Joe said something like, you did that in Red, or like you did that in Red's voice, or like where's the line, or between Red and Harlan in this moment, or something like that. And it's funny too because I'll be doing other things, like Malevolent, where I play a British character but much more chill.
Mm-hmm.
And when he's acting frantic, Joe's kind of like, "You're doing a little Red there," you know what I mean? Because he's kind of always under the surface, that like silly little guy. But I wanted, like, in Red's personality, I wanted to play somebody that felt really natural for me, like not a hard headspace to get into, but also felt different than my normal, speaking voice and my normal thought process, so that it still felt like a character.
Mm,
And I love this animation, by the way, this pie thing. I thought
yeah,
that was so fucking funny too, when he's
thanks.
like slams his face down and passes it. It's
I want to
so
have
good.
it loop where Mari comes in from the side, wakes him up. He scoops
Oh,
all of the pie off of the table, and then another one slides in, and then it goes back to the beginning. Just like an
that's so
infinite
good.
loop of this.
That's fucking funny. I love it.
Yeah.
But yeah, but no, but I also wanted the idea of playing him to be second nature. I didn't want to come to a crossroads constantly and be like, well, what would Red do in this situation? You know what I
Mm.
mean? I wanted it to feel like I could wrap my head around the character. And I mean, we've had debates, and I know Rob and I butt heads sometimes about like why Red would feel this way, but I feel pretty
Whoa.
confident
Really?
99. Oh yeah, like, well, not, shouldn't say butt heads, but like, you know, Rob has especially like a disconnect sometimes in understanding like Red's motivations for doing this, and
I see.
I feel like pretty confident in understanding why Red would do that and justifying that kind of position. And that's kind of the fun of Rob and I being, similar to Red and Jack in many ways too, where we like sometimes butt heads behind the scenes and on camera as well.
Wow. Interesting.
But then I butt heads with everybody, I suppose, especially Alex Guthrie. So
Well, he's your brother. That's only natural.
yeah, well, I think that's part of it too. I think Rob feels like my brother as well.
That's that's awesome.
Yeah, I
Okay.
say it with the utmost love. I think Rob knows that too. I think deep down, I think he and I have a really beautiful friendship, and also like kind of big sibling energy between the two of us at times. You know what I mean?
Mm.
Like when we do hang out and it's not Dice Shame, and there's like a mutual ribbing of third parties, or sort of a joyous joke between the two of us, because I think there are spaces that he and I really, really click on. And
Hmm.
then in terms of like playing a game, I think we both have a little bit of that old school D&D in us more than anyone else.
Ah, I see.
Like Justin was so apathetic to the game. It kind of was neither here nor there. Alex
Just a
Guthrie
tool.
is so, yeah, yeah. Well, he was just so, good or bad. He can't take it either way with everything.
Mm-hmm.
And Alex Guthrie is so indifferent. He's kind of like, yeah, cool, I'll do it. Whereas I think Rob and I really care about different things, and often the same thing. We really have like a strong passion behind a lot of the decisions we play and a lot of the roles we do. And it's funny because I think so many of the things that we both really respect about the game and the show are the same, and yet at
Mm.
times we kind of address them so differently. But that's what I love about Rob, like at the same time, if it was anyone else, I don't think the show would be nearly as good for many, many reasons. But speaking directly to the role that he and I share, in the fact that we have these disagreements, I think it gets so much better because of it.
Yeah, I mean that I very much feel that. Yeah, I but Red and Jack. I literally forgot Jack's name, man. It's the Red stream, ain't it? Red and Jack definitely feel like my actual real world brothers. So
Yeah.
it's a very real dynamic to me, and I we all really appreciate it, I'm sure. Um,
Yeah, and I think I do too, and I think Rob does too. And I think if he and only played it, if there was nothing that kind of trickled out to the real world, then it wouldn't really be authentic, would it? It would only be the caliber of acting that you would expect in a fucking movie or a TV show, and
mm,
not that real emotion. And it's interesting because, especially in RPGs, there's the notion of the players will react so much more passionately and more, like attached, if there's real stakes, and that's what this idea of the die is, or the pull of the Jenga tower. It's like, well, if your success or failure is based on this role, you are so attached to it, and that's why when we scream when there's a natural 20, it's because there were actual stakes. And the same goes with kind of, acting and having these conflicts, like when the characters are emotionally involved, almost the same way the players are, then what they're acting feels so much truer. It feels so
yeah.
much more like the audience is like, oh wow, that felt like a real argument or a real disagreement or real
Mm-hmm.
love, you know. And I think that is one of those small things, that big doors swing on small hinges, and I think that's one of the small things that makes uh, Dice Shame.
Yeah. I mean, it's the joy of improv is that it's more, I mean, it always feels more genuine to me than acting when it's something that people have to feel in the moment and don't say the perfect words or whatever and bring in relationships from outside into the game. And yeah,
Although maybe Rob disagrees, I don't know. He's here and he hasn't said anything, so maybe he's like,
he's a quiet one in chat. He only chips in when he
he
uh
wants to.
okay. You've already kind of addressed it, but maybe you can go into more details about some of the other characters. Uh,
Yeah.
what are Red's feelings towards his fellow party members? Does he have a
Oh man.
favorite? Does he distrust any of them, or admire or look up to any of them?
Yeah, like I think Red's feelings towards Jack are probably the most apparent. Like it's
Mm-hmm.
a combination of everything, And the thing is, these characters are all really young too. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like we don't know how Red is, in terms of age. I always picture him kind of mid 30s type vibe, maybe young,
Interesting.
or maybe younger. I don't know. And Jack is like 50, but for an elf, that's still like
25.
30. Yeah. So I think a lot of the kind of petulant nature that Jack and Red share is pretty apparent and genuine between those two characters. Red, I think, absolutely loves Doran.
Mm-hmm.
I think, how does Red feel about Doran? I think he sees Doran as a bit of a side character, honestly. I think a lot of the time where he's like, let's do this or whatever, he's got this kind of like, oh, I want
Doran
to
is
take care of
Red's sidekick.
kind of, yeah, I suppose so, right?
Yeah.
And then Mari, I think Red feels a little bit distant from Mari. I think he doesn't really know where he fits in Mari's world.
Mm.
I would guess that, especially because Mari is a character that's joined later and he connected so strongly with her, I would imagine that there is a part of Red that fears that Mari is only passing through. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And I think once we solidify her role in the story in terms of like her connection to the ordning, and once she feels kind of like there's no way she's going anywhere, then I think it's going to change a little bit. And I think that's partly why there's been moments here and there with Red and Mari where Red feels like he's got a bit of a distance there.
Yeah.
Because the one thing that's true about Red is that, he runs away from problems he can't solve. And if Mari is leaving, that becomes a problem he can't solve, and therefore he'll run away from it.
Oh, heartbreaking. Uh, okay. Where do you see your character arc going? Do you have like an end goal in mind for Red? Do you want him
Oh
to
yeah.
develop into like a specific person, grow or
Um,
decay?
yeah, I mean, Joe and I have long since planned what Red's arc is.
Wow,
Oh yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. This is all look, the benefit of like being able to well, so there's a few reasons I also like because I know there's drips and drabs of like Red's backstory and stuff, which is really fun actually because the next episode you get more of Red's backstory. Like I
Yes.
think it's 2 episodes, I think, or something. I don't know. There's a few that come up. But the reason we like paced it out specifically and didn't really talk about it, there's a multitude of reasons, but one of them being that I kind of pitched Red to Joe as being like the backbone of everything, no matter what. Because in a non-narrative sense, should Rob or Alex Guthrie or Alex Nersal or Justin decide, hey, I don't want to do this anymore, and we still wanted to, we knew that Red would be, if he's alive, the constant character. You know what I mean? So
Mm,
we played the long game with his story to ensure that like if everything else drops out, there's still touchstone that people can kind of come back to. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Assuming he's not, you know,
Murdered
an undead
horribly.
creature or murdered horribly. But that's also why I like play him really tactically, like I because I try really hard to make sure he doesn't get hit, which is stressful for me sometimes. But yeah, we have absolutely Red has an end goal in mind, which is really exciting, and I can't talk about it
Yeah.
because
Ah,
it's kind of a big thing.
exciting, exciting. I'm dying to know, but I guess I just have to listen to the podcast.
Yeah, well, this will be like a season 5 thing, so you can keep
Season
waiting
5?
around.
Bro, we're on season 2 right now. Oh my God.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. Like to me, I like, and I've said this many times, but like to me, this is a as long as we can fucking do it type thing. Like Joe and I have long since loved it, you know, and we played every Wednesday for 3 fucking hours a night. You know, it's not hard to record for less than that. Sometimes once a week, sometimes twice a month. You know what I mean? And then I'm doing the lion's share of the work. So the joy of getting to be a player and kind of just seeing the character you have kind of develop and have nice music under it and stuff, I hope is enough of a pull for the people who are playing to kind of be like, well, that's an easy commitment for me. I just get to play a game and it gets to sound cool, you know?
Yeah. Ugh.
It's kind of my hope. Oh, Rob's answered. He said, I think Red and Jack and Harlan and Rob have very similar sibling energy, and it's my fault. It's not your fault. Jack wasn't so Rob like. They would have different energies, but I just made me the wizard. Well, not actually, but kind of.
Me, the wizard.
No, it's not your fault. It's no one's fault. I love it. I love it to death.
Uh, fascinating. Ugh. I have questions for Rob too, but no matter.
Save it. It's stream.
uh, uh, sorry. I'm finding
Don't apologize.
I've taped my questions to the wall, but I did it kind of far away, so I'm really
That's
squinting.
adorable. That's
Uh,
so cool.
uh, do you think a point there would be okay, I think you might have just answered this actually, so I'm gonna ask it, but I'm gonna guess that the answer is no. Do you think there would be a point where Red would give up on the campaign? Do you think if certain people died, or if he could become apathetic or disillusioned, distracted?
So, yes, 100%
Oh,
yes.
okay, not what I was
I don't,
expecting.
well, and again, so I don't want to say too much, but so there's a lot of ideas that Joe and I have discussed about Red. And the problem with making big plans like this is that number one, obviously they're dependent on the way the other players feel because, you know, if Red felt a certain way and they as players weren't interested in seeing that play out, then it couldn't really go that direction.
Mm.
But I also see a lot of and it's funny because we're probably going to end up pitching something to the players within the next few months about something similar to this, without giving too much away. But I
What?
guess I guess what I mean to say is a lot of that is stuff that we have to walk that line between A, like what is role playing, and B, what is the story we're telling. Because like how does that story then evolve? And if the idea for the evolution of that decision or a decision like that ends up being more interesting or just as interesting, then it's absolutely something worth pursuing. The question is, can that be more interesting than what we're doing?
Hmm.
And there's many ways that it could be, you know what I mean, done in a fascinating way. And I think good stories don't just evolve, but also try new things and change in different ways.
Mm.
And I really like taking risks in terms of like ways the story can be told. I mean, you know, the episodes where we split the party, you know, like a prime example is the last episode where Jack and Red and Alistair and Mari and Doran kind of end up split together. You know, from the editor's mindset, as we were kind of winding down that episode, I jumped in and was like, "Oh, you know what? We should do the next episodes separate." You know, and I don't think anyone would argue the fact that that's kind of where my mind is at when we're recording a lot. Me being like, "Oh, you know what? We can do this," because at the end of the day, they know it's got to be up to me to like cut those two episodes. Then,
Mm-hmm.
and it's funny because we originally envisioned that episode, or I should say, I kind of pitched that episode as kind of an alternation between the two storylines, an alternation between Red and Jack's storyline, and alternating with Red and Mari and Doran's storyline.
Mm.
But we ended up making them two separate episodes for
Yeah.
multiple reasons,
I
and I think they work really well as separate
I
episodes.
agree. I was about to say that. I think they work really well. Yeah.
And but so ultimately, it's what serves the story of the show while also allowing the players to feel like they get to, you know, do a fair amount of role playing, you know, because you don't want to be too handheld as well. You know,
Mm-hmm.
it's that fine line, and I think, and Joe does it really well. I think the players or the characters, you know, are really where all that role playing freedom comes. You know, what they choose to do, what they choose to pursue, what they choose to talk about, what they choose to, you know, but you know, at the same and obviously talking to her about, hey, I want to take Mari down this path, or I want to try this, or I want to visit this place. But then in terms of like also trying to keep the narrative structure interesting and salient is like a task in and of itself that has to feel
Mm-hmm.
like something that something, you know, is being thought about, you know, something, some thought is put into, you know, where this episode goes and how this episode is going to sound. So but I
Yeah.
like doing that. I think that's the really fucking fun stuff.
Yeah. I would bet it would be hard to take something that is at its core kind of loosey goosey and make it into a show. Whereas I don't know anything about Malevolent, but it's scripted, right? So like, you
It
know.
is, but it's funny because every so the way Malevolent works is I do a short like 10-15 minute episode a week, you know, like a little slice of it,
Oh, really?
and it ends with a choice, and the patrons choose. They vote, you know, left or right, and then I write that new episode
Mm.
on a Monday and record it and edit it, and then so they craft the story. So it's kind of an RPG in and of itself.
Interesting. Interesting.
Yeah. So I've learned, put it this way. So I'm like 220 episodes into Dice Shame, and you know, thousands of hours of GMing and all that kind of stuff. So the idea of like rolling with it and kind of making a story out of the branching path is something that I've really practiced. I've
Yeah.
really stretched that muscle.
Mm-hmm. Seems like it. Seems like it. That's really interesting. What a selling point for Malevolent. It's kind of RPG-ish. Uh,
It is actually. It's funny because a lot of people like would pitch it as that, and it was even under the RPG like tag at the beginning.
oh, interesting.
Yeah, because there's like dice rolls in it in the early episodes too.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I
What?
think you'd like it more than you realize.
I can't do horror. But
Oh yeah, that's fair.
yeah, sorry. But I'm sure it's good. Uh, uh, do you have a favorite moment or arc in the podcast where your character really shined?
My character?
Yeah, your character. What else? Who others?
Well, I don't know. Arc in the podcast versus just my character. I really liked when Red went feral against that kid in the little.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry.
No, no, I appreciate it. That was not a to you or anything like that. I was just thinking. No, I like showing darker Red. It's difficult though because there's this again. There's a balance between like, well, if Red's too dark, why would the party trust him or care about him? You know what I mean? And if decisions I make are too alienating for the parties, for the players, you know, how can they get to the space where they don't just want to talk about it constantly?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a thing. Like a prime example is when Jack found out that Red was an assassin. You know, that
Yeah.
was like a real hill to get over narratively as well, because Jack fundamentally was like, I just can't let this go, which is totally fair and like an honest interpretation of that character's motivations, while also, you know, Red trying to be like, hey, you know, here's where I'm at, and then also the reality of like, okay, but we do have to keep moving on in the story. Like, how do we keep moving if these characters are like fundamentally opposed ideologically? You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So it's kind of a, is Jack even over that? No, I don't think Jack is over that. And I think, but I think he's stopped talking about it, which is nice.
That's
Shut
all
the
you
fuck
need,
up.
really.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, I mean, arcs wise, I really loved Red's. Man, I always love the joyous moments of Red. Like I think the really frivolous moments, the you know, the yarder scenes, you know, where they get tattooed
Yeah.
or something. And I mean, I really did like that One Long Night episode where him and Alex, or him and Doran,
Mhm.
got to do kind of their own little side mission, because I think it is really fun to have episodes that are completely disconnected from everything else, like a bottle episode. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? But yeah, arcs wise, I think to a degree, part of me feels that Red has suffered the most from like arc syndrome, because I don't think he's had concise start stop, like little narrative loops the way a lot of other players have. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
I don't think he's had the kind of, because he doesn't have as many touchstones in Faerun as a lot of people, and additionally, again, as I mentioned previously, like the design of him is to be a little bit more spread out, and then finally, because I think a lot of the problems that he's sort of maybe dealing with aren't things that have neat bows. You know, B showing up was a wonderful, wonderful addition, and I love it so much.
Yeah.
And you know, there's so much of me that constantly wants to continue to like talk about her and bring her back, and have more of that type of stuff. But I don't know if Red suits that scene the best anyway. I think it's not really his, where I think he's strongest.
Hmm. I always found it very interesting how Red interacted with B and just children in general, because they come across
Hmm.
kids occasionally, and Red's so good with them, and it's very funny to watch him reject being a father figure in B's life originally, and then
Hmm.
really latch onto it when B was there.
Hmm.
You know, it was just
Well,
a very interesting aspect of his character.
yeah, and I loved it. I thought it was really great, and I think it's true. You know, Red sees the joviality in children, and it's attractive, and you know, it's sad in a way, because I find Red is like kind of a sad character. You know, he's clearly at his core someone with a lot of joie de vivre and a lot of like jovialness, and you know, here he comes over to Faerun or whatever, and
Hmm.
you know, he gets stolen, someone steals from him, and he kills somebody, you know,
Yeah.
uh, in a kind of a, I don't even see that original, you know, murder as like an act of rage from him necessarily, but sort of a reaction, you know, like something to do, and maybe he's even bewildered, and he gets recruited to this syndicate that manipulates him and tricks him, and ends up convincing him that all of these things he's doing don't need to be thought about, and so he becomes a tool. You know, he's taken advantage of. He becomes this weapon to be utilized because he's dumb. You know, he's, and I think that's the thing that always kind of gets under my skin at the end of the day, when I'm like trying to justify, you know, Red doing this, and
Yeah.
Jack being frustrated at it. It's like, because he was like taken advantage of, like he was tricked, and you know, tricked into a life of like, you know, doing this kind of stuff. Like, do you think Red is the kind of person motivated by money, you know, or was it like belonging? And I think Red even talks about the idea of belonging to something in the dark tide, and that's not to say he's right in any way. Like, obviously, of course, what he does is horrible and wrong, but I think there's a lot of sadness behind the idea of this foreign creature being manipulated into taking this. And then I think there's a lot of strength in him, like seeing the humanity in one of his targets and being like, wait, this is wrong. And I think I'm proud of him for realizing that, and no one ever
Yeah.
says that. Like, there's no ever like, hey, good job for not doing this anymore. It's always been like, you fucking piece of shit. You used to be an assassin. And it's like, you know what I mean? I don't know. There's like and I think because Red is such a goofy character, like a fun little like
Guy.
humor. Yeah. That people don't really take the time to kind of think beyond that veneer to sort of sympathize or empathize with the position he must have been in. And it's a fun space to play in.
I
It'd be
think
nice one day.
I
But I think
oh,
to a degree
sorry.
we've also passed that narratively.
Oh, please don't say that. I'd love to bring it
Well,
up again. But like
tough though. Like, sometimes you get a one and done, and it's like, well, we can't talk about this again. You know what I mean? Like,
uh
that's not to say this is one, but sometimes you get those, and it's like it just doesn't really make sense to slot in.
I was gonna say I think that like the victim the idea of Red being a victim to the dark tide is maybe not something he would emphasize or explain well, because
No, of course not. I don't, because he wouldn't understand it.
yeah.
Like, how often would somebody who's been like, duped by a cult or something, or tricked into some sort of work that they don't want to do? How many of them, especially with Red's intelligence score, would come out and be like, "Wait a minute, I was tricked into this." He
Yeah.
convinced himself that this was the right way of life, and then he broke out of it because something felt off about it. He just like, this wasn't right. He pays the money back. He tries to push the past behind him. They come and hunt for him, and he reveals his truth to his friends, and his friends kind of, you know, not turn on him, but that I can't
They
remember
don't
exactly how to phrase.
understand and
But
they're
they don't
very
understand.
horrified. Yeah.
There's no like, there's no, compassion there, and I think
Hmm.
the ability to talk about that has to come through compassion. Because I see Rob saying, "I want more of that Red." It's like, well, yeah, but that doesn't come from a vacuum, right? Like that can't come from Red being like, "Hey, I've been thinking about this, and all of a sudden I realized that I was duped." And this is not to blame anybody, because this is
Sure.
just the way beautiful role playing goes. Like, the cool thing about it is we don't find these things until they're asked. You know what I mean? Like, we don't get to see that side of Red unless it's like
Spoken. Yeah.
spoken or even
Dragged
prompted.
out of
And we
him.
do well, and we do a lot of behind the scenes sometimes too. And we're like, hey, like, what do you need out of this scene, or what do you want out of the scene? And when it works, when all the players are really clicking, then I think we get some really fantastic scenes out of there, because we're kind of like, oh, yeah, 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 that's like, we found the core of like a conversation that needs to happen here. But
Mm.
it's just so much work, though. You know what I mean? Like, and this is, again, all of us, like Rob, Alex, Joe, myself, we get a free pass. Like, I'm not at all upset that things get missed, because I think at the end of the day, it is so tough, especially this far into a game, to be tracking all of this shit and to know the best answers. And
Yeah.
you know what I mean? And like, even if that question was asked for Red, who knows if he would have said that in that moment? It might not have
Hmm.
been something in my mindset. I'm a human too, and maybe I have a bad day, and I'm like, well, that's not something I was thinking about. Well, whatever, moments passed or whatever. And that's kind of the fun of the spark in a bottle type thing.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes you catch them and sometimes you miss them, and that's kind of the way the dice roll.
Hmm. The joy of improv, as it were. Rob has said
Yeah,
something very bitchy in the comments, and I feel like I need to read it. Um, I mean, Jack
do it.
struggled to belong, and he didn't need to kill anyone.
Can
uh,
you now? You must be able to understand how Jack and Rob are like blended together, because he's like this when we play. Just to let you know, like the amount of stuff he like will sign. Like, oh, okay, fine, whatever. I'll just cut it out. It's funny. Sometimes I'm like, oh man, I should just keep all this shit in and show the real meat of who we are. I'm teasing. It's not that bad at all.
yeah, sure,
He's
but it still would be
his little
interesting.
tongue face is the real. I will say this: Rob is definitely the funniest person on the podcast by far.
Wow, more than Alex Guthrie?
Down 100%. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Wow,
Yeah. Because
interesting.
the thing is, Rob's humor is always like, um muttered to himself, which is really good. See, the thing is, Alex Guthrie, and I've said this before, I think, Alex Guthrie swings for every fucking joke.
Yeah,
Like,
that's
he always swings. So what happens is he will, like, make 50 stupid moronic jokes, and two of them are recent, decently good, and then I'll keep them in. So he just sounds really funny because he's always swinging. But I
Because he
will
cut out
give
all the bad, so he looks
ha-
great.
oh, you have no idea, man. The ums that I cut out of this fucking
Ah,
show you fill 1,000 football fields or whatever.
that's
Um,
hilarious.
but, yeah, but Rob doesn't swing every time, but I would say he's the most consistent swinger in terms of the jokes. Like when he does make them, like I would say the jokes that that I keep in, like which obviously aren't all of them, but the jokes that Rob keeps in are like 80% of the jokes he makes. Like
Hmm.
he's really good on that. That's not to say Jack's funny. Jack's not funny at all.
No,
But
no,
Rob is.
that's
So there's the
hilarious.
difference.
Yeah. So
No,
maybe
he's quick too. Marimo says he sits there and thinks, but no, he doesn't. I'll give credit Rob. Rob's jokes are quick too.
amazing. I that not what I not the take I expected from you. I was really gonna.
But
I really thought you were gonna say Alex Guthrie is the funniest, or you're the funniest. No,
oh God,
never in my mind did you were you gonna say Rob. I
no,
think
no,
Rob
no,
is
no.
funny. It's just
Rob
crazy.
is very funny.
Yeah.
Rob's really funny, and and he knows when to strike too, which is good. Listen, I got all the hot take. I listened to all of it, like everything that's edited, everything that's got. I know everyone's strengths and weaknesses to a T. I know who pauses too much, who coughs too much, who fucking talks away from the mic, who records too low, who records too. I got lists. I tell you.
Well, since we're about 15 minutes to the end, I think maybe we should step away from the red questions and
Already 15 minutes to the end.
I mean, if you want to go longer, you can.
I can go
I'm
longer. I
okay.
can go
It's
longer
just
all night. I got.
ain't it real late in Canada?
I don't care.
All right,
It's a Thursday or something. I don't know.
cool. But I still think we should jump to maybe the behind the scenes stuff since we're
Whatever
already.
you want. I'm all in.
Okay, uh, let's jump to any behind the scene moments that couldn't end up in the podcast for whatever reason. Maybe they weren't recorded or they were not sanitary.
Mm. I mean, yeah, lots of behind the scenes like when fights happen. You
Uh,
know what I mean? Like when we're like, "What the fuck is this?" And the recording just still happens. Like and then that all gets cut. It's like obviously, what the hell is this gonna stick in the show?
I guess I mean
Yeah.
like memorable.
Oh, well, they're memorable. Um, um, yeah, I mean, good shit that should have been in the show that gets cut.
I don't know. Whatever.
Yeah,
This is
I
free
mean,
space, man. Talk about what you
no,
like.
no, I mean, no, no, I mean, there's like literally most recent episode, which isn't out yet. Uh, I think it comes out probably next week. There, yeah, yeah. When me and Alex go into actual sibling mode and not fun sibling mode, oh yeah, man, he can be such a dick sometimes. I can be a dick too, obviously, but like I remember this one fucking time, and I don't care. I was right. Literally don't care. But we were we were like walking. It was right before, um, oh my god, the gnome
Stronghold?
stronghold. What was that
I
called?
don't remember.
Oh, fucking, I want to say, well, there's Swift Neblins. They're not. They were gnomes. It was Zozenboffel, I think.
There
Yeah,
you go.
Zozenboffel.
Yeah, that's it.
Um,
Yes.
and I don't remember. Thank you. Fucking, I knew I was more right, and I needed the confirmation. Fucking thank you, Rob. I appreciate that. And I don't actually remember the context of the story, but it was a crossroads, and I remember there was like a right and a left path, and I cannot remember for the life of me. Maybe Rob will fill us in. And I think Alex Guthrie was having a reason. He was like, "Oh well, we got to go right" or something like that, and I was like, "Oh no, well, like we can do either." But he wouldn't choose one, but he wanted to lead the way. Yeah, so he chose neither or something. They would know the story better. But either way, the long and short of it
Joe's in
is
chat.
he
Sorry,
was
go ahead.
he was such a dick, and he was like, you know, like ended up being like, well, whatever we want to do, we'll just do it. And I was like, just pick one, and it just totally stopped fucking the gameplay. There was like a 2 minute calm down period, and then we just pressed on. And then Alex gets to this. He's always just like, "We'll just fucking just do it. Just do whatever. Just go ahead." He gets really impatient, which is really funny.
You said that
Um,
about the slug it out scene too. that he
Yeah,
just wanted
he's
to move
always the
on.
one. He's always the one first to be like, um, well, whatever. Let's just choose something. Like he's always the one to be like, ugh, I don't want to talk too much. Let's just go.
Hmm.
Which is funny because I like he's often the person with the longest, most meandering takes on like Doran gets edited to shit and it's not even that different. Like it's just way longer. He's just like, well, and there's another way to do it. But to me, that's also like why I love him so much. And I can say all this because I've said already at the beginning, he's my favorite player on the show. Like it wouldn't be the same without him, like
Hmm.
including myself. Like he's too unique. It's so clear that Alex Guthrie is somebody who's not a role player that's thrust into a role playing scenario. And I think that's what's so good about him. You know what I mean? Like there's a genuineness to him not knowing what dice he fucking rolls. Like you can't fake that shit, you know? No one plays this many hours of D&D and still fucking knows as little as him without just being uniquely him. And to
Yeah.
me, that's like that secret sauce. Like that's the thing that fucking makes him such a fucking valuable piece of or a player. What's his band's name? I can't even fucking remember it. It's like no like
Uh,
I can't messy.
some
It's some joke.
pun, some pun
Some pun.
about something or
No
other.
no use. Oh, they sound like One Direction. No Direction.
No direction.
I think it's No Direction.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is really yeah. So I would say like arguments like that when we when Alex and I go from brother mode to real mode is definitely the time where it's like, oh my god, because yeah he gets real pissy quick. He also really, and this is funny too, like he doesn't mind taking direction from anybody, but he hates taking it from me, especially like well with anything really. Like so oftentimes I'll have to like message Joe and be like, just tell him to try this, and then she'll be like, well, what if Doran tried this, and then he'll be like, oh, I like that, but then I could say the same thing and he'd be like, just like maybe I don't know.
Well, he is your brother, I guess. That
Yeah,
sounds
for real. If
sounds
he's in a
very
really good mood,
relatable.
if he's in a really good mood, then he's totally fine. You know.
That's hilarious. So, the things that are behind the scenes that get cut out are Alex Guthrie.
Yeah, a big part of it for sure, for sure.
That's funny. Okay,
Yeah, taking direction from your little brother is a special level of something. That's entirely it. Like he just doesn't like taking direction from me at all,
funny.
which
Ah,
is fair.
I'm the little sibling. I get that.
So when
Uh,
you give direction to your older brother,
yeah, brothers. Yeah, it doesn't
mm,
happen. It doesn't happen. Um, so, what's your process for editing? How long does it take you on average? I think that's about 2 days, is what Joe has said. How do you
yeah,
format recording sessions? How does it compare to Malevolent? You've already kind of talked about that. I don't know, no, 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 nitty gritty stuff.
yeah,
We're dying to hear it.
done. Cool. Well, I'll get as detailed as we want without being boring. I edit and record in Ableton. I record Joe and my track simultaneously through like a task cam plugged directly in and all that kind of fun stuff.
Hmm.
And we just sync clap, which means every episode starts off with a 3, 2, 1 clap, and then 3, 2, 1 clap, and then I just line up those two claps so everything's in line.
Nice,
And
nice.
then we record separately. Everyone sends it to me, and then I upload them into Ableton. And I would say editing takes me anywhere from 2 hours to 9. Depending on how annoying the episode is. Combat is always the worst. It always takes way longer.
Mm.
Turns are the bane of me. Some people's turns go on really long. Some people's turns go on really
Clear and concise and
repetitive,
short? Oh,
very concise.
repetitive, I see.
Some are very concise and short, absolutely, yeah.
Hmm.
But yeah, and then I would say yeah, like the most frustrating thing I think in editing, honestly, and we do it a lot, and I do it as well, like it's not to point anybody out, is like we'll remember something and we'll be like, oh, can we put this back in here? And because I edit very much in order, right? Like,
Hmm.
and then we get there, and then I'm like, oh fuck, and I'm like edit it, and it's like a total maybe rewrite of a part, and then I have to go back and put it. But
Oh, rewrite
um,
is a very interesting way to put it. That I,
yeah, like a redo or a pickup or something like that to change it, and then that happens a lot too. Like sometimes, not so much as of late, but I don't know, felt like a lot more in the first season. I
hmm.
would shoot a message contact Alex and be like, hey, can you just say I'm coming, like, or I'm like running down the hall or some stupid thing like that, so I can make this scene make fucking sense.
Funny.
Because,
Interesting.
well, it's so tough, and I don't blame anybody, but when you're in combat, just remembering to be like, okay, Doran, it's your turn, like cleanly, you know what I mean? Or like, I am going to attack again. It gets really fucking annoying because
Mm.
like an example of an Alex Guthrie turn. I can talk about him the most because he's not here and he'll never listen to this. An example of Alex Guthrie turn will be like, yeah, Doran, how many feet away are you? Oh, it's 15 feet. Okay, 50 feet away.
He's a fighter. They're not
Doran
complicated.
walk. Well, but the thing is, and then what he'll do is he'll be like, okay, Doran walk, blah, blah, does this, goes, and then, okay, that, yeah, miss. Okay, that definitely misses. And then he'll be like, you know what, I'll just attack again. And it's like none of it is like clean or concise. And
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes, thankfully, and I think this has really only happened for season 2, where I just said something to everybody. Joe catches it most of the time if it's not me, and she'll be like, "Can you take that all again?" Rob has done it once or twice where he's like, "Hey, you should take that again." Really helpful, and I've been like, "Thank you, Rob. I really appreciate you saying that."
Mm.
Where he'd be like, "Hey, let's take that again," so Harlan doesn't have to comb through all that. But the idea of like not saying clearly, "Okay, I'm going to attack again," or something like that, shit like that gets forgotten so much, and it gets so frustrating. Like so many frustrations, or just the random like dribbles off of conversation, which is something I haven't actually talked to them about. Now they're watching, so I can say, stop dribbling off in conversation. A lot of them, almost everybody, will be like if I'm reading Marimo's comment, like, I'm working on a silly little gift for you all right now. I'm resisting so hard not to show it.
Oh my gosh.
And then I'm like, oh, I can't do that. So I just cut the line. Like I'm not gonna boost your audio so we get this weird room tone sound of as it
Yeah.
gets louder in the back because I'm trying to get people to hear what you say.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not interesting enough for me to message you and say, hey, I can't finish my job. Can you send me this line? And they'll say, oh, I'll do it tonight. And I'm like, no, I'll just cut it. I don't need to do that. So shit like that sometimes gets cut because it's just like, well, I can't do this. Like I can't fake an end of a conversation. And it's interesting because I don't think anyone's pointed it out, but oftentimes characters will get like interrupted, and we interrupt each other all the time. Everyone interrupts everybody, but a lot of those in editing are fake interruptions because the people just didn't finish their fucking sentence, and I'll fake an interrupt because there's just no
Mm.
ending. Like again, Rob is a huge person to blame on this, and
Dribble
Nursal does a
offer.
lot too. Actually, both of them do, yeah, where they'll kind of just like stop talking or dribble off. And so if it sounds like Red is interrupting Jack a lot, which does happen in the role playing, but if it seems like an excessive amount, it's because Jack didn't finish his sentence and I just need a way to keep the conversation going because you can't edit, Jack going, "Oh, maybe if we look at these walls and and then Red keeps talking, it doesn't make sense. So you kind of have to fake an overlap so it kind of makes more sense."
That's really interesting, and I can't wait to listen extra hard in the podcast from now on to
Yeah.
hear that. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
100%. Oh yeah, it happens. It happens so much. It's really interesting.
That is interesting. Okay, cool.
Anyway, sorry, I got halfway with the question, but yeah, 2 to 9 hours, honestly, depending on that. And then so I do a sequence cut. So I will cut all of the dialogue, so that it's just talking. I will balance it, and basically it will look like the dialogue edit is complete from start to finish. And then what I'll usually do is I'll just leave that for a day, and then I'll come back the next day and I will do the sound effects, ambience, music. Then I'll do the final balance. Then I'll cut the intro clips. Then I'll clue on the ending. Then I'll do any post credit stuff that I pulled out of the episode. Then I will export, and then I'll send it to Rob or Nursal, who usually do the listen to make sure there's no big mistakes. And then I post it.
Interesting. Fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, and both have their annoyances. Like sometimes sequence cut is much worse. Sometimes the sound effects cut is much worse because it's like, like combat for both is kind of the worst.
Hmm.
Because yeah, the music is always starting up the combat music and all that kind of stuff. But I don't know. I really like the last episode. I think the last episode was my favorite episode, possibly ever, but definitely of season 2.
That's very interesting. I mean, I liked it.
Yeah,
I just
I
Can you talk about why?
Yeah, I so first off, I liked the music. I got to put a lot of music in it that I thought was really sweet and representative of the emotion of the scene. But
Mhm.
honestly, I found it really poignant. I thought it really paralleled the failure that they had just dealt with, and the idea of, you know, Mari and Red exploring the unknown essentially and stepping forward into darkness, juxtaposed with Jack and Doran seeing life uh, become birthed and then die in front of their eyes. I thought was a really beautiful metaphor for what they had just had to experience with Ellister, as
Mm.
well as with failures that had come from the inn fight where they had to run away. I thought it was a really accidentally perfect note. And I said this to Joe when I finished it. And I said, had I been writing the story of Dice Shame, that is the first episode I think we've ever done that I wouldn't change anything in. Like I would feel like that would be good enough to put into a story because it worked out perfect. I loved Doran's enthusiasm and innocence, and like he's like, "Oh, hey, little guy." I thought that was so
Yeah.
gorgeous after his sort of like playing with like it made perfect sense for his character.
Yeah.
And I loved Rob's inquisitive nature. It made perfect sense after what happened, like and I thought Mari kind of pushing into the darkness a little bit and being a little bit bolder was really fascinating. I thought Red learning his lesson and kind of being like, maybe we shouldn't be so bold. And then all of it coming to this creature who spoke in telepathic images rather than words, which I thought was just a really nice cap on the end. And then, yeah, I honestly, I just thought it was perfectly poignant, and I thought it was an excellent um, end point or on the preceding three episodes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's that's really beautiful. I
Yeah.
didn't see it that way, and now I really do. Uh,
It's interesting too because you mentioned that you really liked the team up episodes, and it's funny because and
I
I only
do.
realized this after I saw your comment. This episode, which was 96, I think. So 96 had Dorn and Jack and Red and Mari. 97 has Mari and Doran and Jack and Red.
Hmm.
And 98 has Jack and Mari and Red and Doran.
Yes.
The next three episodes, and then we have something special for episode 100, which I'm excited about.
Oh man, I am too. I
Yeah,
don't know what you have. I'm so excited. I'm sure it'll be
fun.
great.
A really, really fun episode. I think you're gonna like it.
Hell yeah. Uh, so before we continue on, it is past 8 p.m. and I know that you said you're good to go longer. But
Yep.
do you have like a hard cutoff point,
Nope.
perhaps?
Nope. I'm all in.
Okay.
I'm good to stop whenever you're ready.
All right. Sounds good. We'll go until I'm hungry.
Oh,
Uh, uh, is there anything you wish people would notice about you? Or, well, hold on. Do you want to switch to red questions or do you want to keep about making of dice shame questions?
but I am all for whatever you want. I am your wrapped guest. You run the show. I'm just here to have fun.
You're the star. You're the star.
No, you're the star of this one. I'm just yapping.
Not true. Untrue. Okay.
Mhm.
Uh, well, since we talked about music a little bit with the last episode, what's your
Mm.
process for making music? Is there any programs or instruments that you love the most or feel like dice shame's like motif, basically?
Yeah. So I will say this. Um, Listeners of Dice Shame will probably recognize I use a lot of the same themes from Malevolent, just slow.
Wah!
Yeah. Well, so here's my logic. Number one, it's a lot to make new music all the time that is interesting
That's fair.
because it's like at one point that well just dries up. You know what I mean? Like what you can't keep pulling out bangers after bangers after bangers. Not to say any of these are bangers, but like to just keep doing that, it kind of becomes, you know what I mean? Like it would be exhausting,
Mm-hmm.
to it's like
You're
trying to
already
draw a
editing the
new
damn show.
well, that's what I mean, and it's like trying to draw a new character every day. You know what I mean? You're not just drawing like Doran. It's like you have to invent a whole new character for this scene. So I do a lot of that. But with the new stuff, honestly, my vibe is, and we talked about music before, or you mentioned music before, because I know you really like Justin's music from season one, and I found it really quality. Like Justin's music was really quality. It had much more to it than mine in terms of its denseness. It had much more in it in terms of like standing on its own feet.
Mhm.
But I felt it never truly, in my opinion, just my opinion, reflected the tone of the scene, nor did it enhance what I felt was happening. And I remember many times going back to Justin because, you know, it was like an emotional scene and like the music would be like boop, 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 boop. And we're like, this feels like really disconnected. And, you know, he would kind of begrudgingly go back and be like, okay, fine, and re-record and do something else and be like, okay, that like works a little better. And maybe a lot of that like disagreement obviously never really came out because we all saw the end result.
Mhm.
But I am really proud of my admittedly simple, like, you know, way more stripped down themes, but I think they're much more emotionally resonating with what we're hearing. Like I try more to encapsulate or enhance the moment rather than just score it.
Mm.
And I think that's the big difference between the two seasons at least. And my intention with the second season is to kind of lean more towards that.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just add on to that again, uh, I really like Justin's music, but I I think the time that you're talking about when we talked about this, you were on a stream and it was very like disconnected. But
Yeah,
I never got to say that like while I really like Justin's music, I sometimes felt like it overtook the scene to be more like it to kind of swallow what was
yo,
actually happening.
and that's exactly what Joe and I would say to him. And I again, we went back a few times because I can't remember the exact episodes, but I remember like and back in the old days, I would do the sequence cut and then I would hand it over to him to do all the sound effects and the music. And the amount of times that we would get it back, and Joe would be like, I can't hear what they're saying, Justin. Like there's no
Mhm.
we can't hear the dialogue. And it was just kind of the perspective and this is really funny too, and I can say this now, but like also if you go back to season one, the amount of sound effects and music that's put under just Kraloth's character comparatively to every other character, you should make a mental note if you're listening,
Ooh.
because that was also a thing that we were like, why are you only scoring Kraloth? And he was like, yeah, like he admitted it too, and he was like, well, I just found it was, and that was a really weird conversation we had to have because you know,
Mhm.
not trying to throw shade. It's just one of those things that I thought was like
It's
one of the
interesting.
reasons. Well,
Yeah.
once it got handed back to me, I was also like, cool. I can try to do a more balanced job at making sure that like everyone gets sound effects in the scene and like, you know, the spells equally sound kind of like, you know, like
Mm.
everyone's attention. But anyway, yeah, no, and I wasn't upset by anything you said but I appreciate your clarification. But yeah, you know, and it's interesting. There's so many different ways to do stuff like that in music and really highlight different moments. And honestly, it's really exciting to kind of continue to practice and change and try new ways.
Yeah, I
And I mean,
mean, I don't dislike your music, but I think that even over season two, which is not as long as season one, think the music, in my opinion, has gotten better.
a
Like,
hundred percent,
yeah, gotten better
a hundred.
place, gotten better like vibes, and so like
Oh, absolutely.
it's
I
very
mean,
exciting to see where it goes.
season two came really abruptly in a way too.
Mm.
You know, with Justin's leaving and us getting Nersal in and trying to kind of like scramble forward and figure out like what we wanted to do. And you know, like we didn't plan on season two ending at 150 necessarily. We were like,
Gotcha,
well,
gotcha.
Justin's leaving the show, maybe this is a good time to like
Wrap it up.
move on and wrap it up and try something new and you know put
Mm-hmm.
a put a little bit of time between season one and season two. So at that point I had only been doing the sequence cut, so it fell into my lap and I was like, okay, cool, I'll jump into this. But you know, like he originally wanted me to just use his music and had them all laid out, and that got all weird. And anyway, the long and short of it is I totally agree and I appreciate the recognition, and I do think it's getting better, and I'm excited to see what season three brings
Yeah, me too.
in terms of music and everything really.
I'm excited about everything about Daisha, man. I
And
freaking
I
love
love
this
that.
podcast. Yeah.
Aw, that's so cool to hear. I love that. I love hearing that because it feels like no one does, but it's really cool to hear.
Bro, can I be real with you for a second though?
Be real with me for a second.
I've listened to so many D&D podcasts. I've said that a million times. Dice Shame is quality. Like it is really good. I feel like it would excel to the levels of NADPOD and the Adventure Zone if it had advertising or like if it was out there. Cause like not to take over your interview or whatever, but like the editing and the music and the characters and the story. I know that Joe's writing it from the book. It doesn't matter. It's incredibly creative and the character dynamics are fucking phenomenal. It's not just me being like a little obsessed fan. I have reference. Like I have context for D&D podcasts and how good they can be and how shit they can be. And like
Mm,
D&D is so or D&D Dice Shame is so clearly amazing. So it's like it's very it's a little bit like not heartbreaking. There, that's the word. Heartbreaking
mm.
to hear you be like, "Oh, it's so cool to hear that." When it's like, "Dude, I'm a normal person. I should be everybody on planet Earth, or at least everybody in the USA." Like,
I, no,
I just have eyes. I'm like,
I love hearing it. I mean, honestly, it's and that's what I was kind of saying at the beginning. Thank you so much for like kind of validating us. You know what I mean? Like that joy you have from like enjoying it so much. It does make us feel a little, like genuinely like Joe and I many times, we would hear, you and be like, is it good though? And then, we'll be like, well, maybe it is. And it's tough because you kind of forget, you just kind of, especially with something like this, the toughest is the discipline. The toughest is to stay on it and just to keep going at
mm-hmm,
times. And I
yeah,
know Joe talked about that on her stream, and the idea of like keeping your head down and just trying to make quality content and letting the content speak for itself. Normally there's like a tipping point sometime where it's kind of like, okay, now it's getting a little bit of traction. And I think you're entirely right. Honestly, I think I'm really far too lazy when it comes to like advertising, and you may be the reason we end up like really, kickstarting a big not Kickstarter, but like kickstarting a big advertising campaign to
oh
try to get more
man,
people to listen. Because you're selling me on what you're saying, and I'm buying it, and I do want more people to listen. I'm really proud of the show, and I think the more people we hear that are speaking the way you are, the more excited that we get. Like Joe came off your stream last week, like fired up and like so happy and feeling so good
that's
about
awesome.
it was so awesome. I loved it. Are you kidding? Anyone who makes my wife fucking smile is a 10 out of 10. And the idea that, you know, one person can make her feel so validated, it felt so fucking good. So again, thank you. And
I'm happy
yeah,
to.
I mean, we should be doing more for that. I think we should.
I I
Um,
I just want to my whole point is that I'm a normal person. It's a really good podcast. I'm not special. It's of all of the podcasts I've listened to, it really is my favorite because it really is the best. Like,
oh, thank you.
yeah.
I
Well,
love that.
but enough sweet stuff. Let's just throw that away.
Yeah, get to the dirt again.
Let's get to the freaking dirt. Uh,
She is such a great GM.
she's a fucking phenomenal GM.
Oh,
It's
yeah, she's far too
humble.
hard on herself, humble and hard on herself,
Mm,
both. I think I see too much hardness after, like so. That's the side I see because you can always be like that to your partner, but
hmm
also humble, absolutely.
Yeah. No, she should be really bold and pompous about how good of a GM she is.
That yeah, everyone loves that.
So let's get back to the red questions if you're still good to go.
Dude,
Uh,
yeah, absolutely.
cool. How do you picture your character visually? Are there any minor details that haven't come up in
Ooh.
the podcast or anything you want to like really cement? And while you're saying that, let me just go ahead and add some ears to red here.
I don't really care. Like I don't care about the visual of the ears, honestly. I think the main reason I only ever say he doesn't have ears is because people see the art with the ears, and then when they realize he doesn't, they're like, "What?" Like I think someone on the Discord the other day was like, "When does Red lose his ears?"
Yeah,
And I was,
yeah,
Red's always does never had ears. Like it's just kind of the way he does it. But
yeah.
um, his fur isn't actually red. Actually, that's probably true. His fur is probably more orange. But
I draw him
um,
orange, so I'm happy to hear
man,
that.
how do I picture Red? I mean, this feels mean. You're literally drawing Red.
Well, no, bro, I'm gonna do whatever the hell. I draw Jack as a ginger despite Rob's obvious protests. You're not gonna
That's
stop
true.
me.
By the way, I heard your reasoning on Joe's stream about the Jack Ginger,
Mm-hmm.
and I couldn't agree more. I thought that was such a great, and I thought it was hilarious that Rob and Nursel never asked you? Because it was like, what? I figured they would have asked why you felt that way, and
They've
your
only
your
asked in
reasoning,
a mean way.
but your reasoning was so sound and so reasonable, and I was like, oh, that makes so much. Like you had such a fucking logical structure to it.
Thank
You know what I mean?
you.
You were like, well, obviously his magic is this color, or like his magic feels this color, and this is. And I was like, that's so well thought out.
Thank
And
you.
here's these two people being like, he's not a ginger. I'd be like, listen, she's fucking put more work into thinking whether or not you're a ginger than you have, Jack.
Is Rob still here? Did
Yeah,
you
he
hear
is.
that, Rob? Or
I mean, I'm listen. I'm all for the characters, being however they are
yeah,
in
no,
each
I'm just joking, but
honestly, and this is again probably a frustration to a lot of people. A lot of red is purposefully nebulous
mm,
because I don't enjoy locking a lot. Excuse me, locking a lot down
mm,
for specific things. Mentioned the other day, kind of jokingly, that we don't know how tall Red is, but that's
yeah.
purposeful. He's like to me. And again, this I would say is like one of those fundamental differences between the way that Rob and I play, and probably one of the reasons that he and I butt heads is like I don't really care how tall Red is.
How the hell?
Like
Yeah.
Red is as tall as he needs to be in a scene, and he's as short as he needs to be in a scene. The first time his height comes up where it matters will be the time I define his height. You know what I mean? Like to me, that's not why I roleplay. I don't roleplay to make sure this guy is exactly the size and the shape and this color. Like to me, the idea of him A gets defined in the story, and B is a little bit more nebulous. So the one thing I will say is that in Red's armor
Oh shit.
is the only thing I've ever kind of really pictured. And I always pictured him only having like one shoulder pauldron, like a metal, almost like a sleeve, like from the elbow up to the neck. And like, I know they have certain armor pieces that kind of cover just your heart. I
Mm,
kind of picture like just like an asymmetrical armor. I
like the
always
little
kind of,
like breastplates that are like shoulder.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I totally
yeah.
picture that.
Pictured that, and then I guess technically he would have a breastplate underneath too. But then I pictured him having honestly a lot of asymmetrical aspects to I think the way he wears himself and his armor. I've always pictured like even his face could be slightly asymmetrical too. Like
Mm,
maybe I don't picture his face at all, but like I always kind of like that idea. And I think as he's gotten older, or in season two, I think he wears his hood down a little more. Obviously, it's difficult with his ears and stuff like that. But and then he wears one glove as well, like a archer's glove,
mm,
which they have the leather fingers, so that when you're pulling back the bow like 100 times, you're not wrecking your hand.
yeah.
And then I pictured him in a lot of forest greens
Yes.
and earth, like a lot of earth shades.
Mm. Not
And
red?
no, not red. I don't think he wears red. I think his fur is like orange. Um,
His favorite color is red though.
his favorite color is red. I think when he went to the party, he probably wore like a fancy red, like button up. But I picture him earth colors because
Oh, that's
I think.
awesome. I'm animating a scene from the party and I do have him in a little red suit.
Oh,
But
there you
sorry,
go.
continue.
No, no, and I almost picture him in like the red suit, and not to you don't obviously I don't want to conflict what you got, but
I've already
I was
animated. I'm not changing anything.
I would never expect you to. Are you kidding? I just don't want you to feel bad about it in case. But I almost picture it like a Sergeant Pepper's button up type thing.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
they have like a I don't know what it's called, but like almost like a how pea coat has like one flap kind of. Oh, you have it here actually a little bit, but with like buttons. But
Yeah,
anyway, yeah, and then I picture yeah, that's kind of how I picture his armor.
fun.
Um,
Love it.
yeah,
Love to hear it. It's just
yeah.
interesting to hear.
Oh, and red has red eyes a few times. Did I say that? Yeah. I can't see that stupid heart emoji. Red eyes.
Yeah, the
Yeah, yeah,
stupid heart emoji. I hate it so much.
you can see what they're saying with that. Yeah, I think he has red eyes too.
Cool. Neat. I always give him gold eyes. That's very interesting.
Well, maybe
Red is
it's only
so
red.
intimidating.
Yeah, well, that's what I want. I wanted to play in that space between like a really dangerous person and a really so like one of my favorite movies is a movie called Destry Rides Again.
Hmm.
It's like from 1940 something or other. It's a black and white. It stars James Stewart, and he plays the son of this famous sheriff called Destry. And James Stewart, he is a replacement for a town, and everybody in this town is like, "Oh my God, Destry Jr. is coming. He's the new sheriff. Everyone be on your best behavior. Everyone fucking like straighten up. Everyone be smart." They're really nervous about this new sheriff
A
because
lot
he's
of
going to be
build up.
tough, just like his father was. Anyway, he shows up and it's Jimmy Stewart. I don't know if you know James Stewart or what he looks like.
Yeah, let me
He's
just Google that really quick.
Yeah, he's in It's a Wonderful Life. Have you ever seen It's a Wonderful Life?
Oh, I have.
Yeah, he's the main in that. Mari, Mari. He's like that
Oh,
kind of thin, gangly, very cute guy.
yeah.
And he's kind of youngish in this. And he shows in, and people are like, okay. And he goes into the bar and he orders a cup of milk,
Oh,
and they're like, okay. And he's just, and there's a kerfuffle, and he's kind of like, well, now everybody calm down. What are you doing here? He's like really like even headed and even keeled, and obviously people are like, well, what the fuck is going on? And he has like a new rule where like no one in the bar can have their guns. And obviously, pretty quickly, people are like, well, fuck you. Like, I'm not following you. So the guy, like, denies taking off his guns when he enters the bar. And Jimmy Stewart's like, oh, okay. Oh, he, like, kind of threatens him. He's like, can I see your gun? And they go out front of the bar. And Jimmy Stewart, like, takes this guy's pistol. And he's like, does it shoot straight? And the guy's like, yeah. And he's like, oh. And he points like the top of the barn, like 5 stories up. And he's like, you see that cross up there? And the jerk is like, yeah. And he's like, okay. And he, like, without hesitation, Jimmy Stewart, this calm mannered, milk drinking guy, takes the pistol out and barely aims and fires at the roof of the barn and fires and shoots the little cross off. And it goes flying. And everybody's speechless.
wow.
And he puts the gun away and he shoves the gun back to the guy, and he looks at him, telling the guy, he says, like, don't bring your guns in the bar, with like a really intimidating aura. And
Nice.
everyone respects him. And that trope of like a mild mannered, kind of goofy, loving, silly guy who could fucking shoot the wings off a fly was so appealing to me. I thought that was so cool that I really wanted to kind of play that. And that is my intention with Red, and that's why I use a lot of like sharpshooter feats. Like I hit really high. I put all my points in dexterity so that when I fire, I get like a +10 to hit. And
Mm-hmm.
and all of these kind of mechanical ways. It's called Destry Rides Again. Destry Rides Again. And he is that. So the more unassuming, the more goofy he is, juxtaposed with those, dangerous kind of deadly precision, I think is really really fun for me.
That's fun. Yeah. Cowboy vibes for Red is kind of a interesting
Mm.
take. I
Oh,
I haven't thought about it
well,
that
I
way.
try to every time I kind of take an idea like that, I try to remix it so it doesn't feel like I'm taking anything, too
Oh,
literal. But I
yeah.
do
No, I
like to
agree. But
paint the town red, literally.
hey, that'd be fun. Um. Uh. That's still very interesting. Yeah. It'd be cool to see. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm getting too excited about that. I gotta move on.
Oh no,
um.
it's okay.
Uh. Let's see. What else do I have? I know we jumped around my list a little bit. Give me a second. Also, I'm
Take a
getting
second.
my hand is a little bit getting tired of drawing, so we might just take this to a talking stream.
No worries.
Um. Oh, I think you've already answered this actually. If your character died, what class would you play next? Rogue, right?
Probably Rogue. I don't know. I it really, and it's funny because I think fucking Rob googling Destry's best friend is Jack. Just saying. In the movie, Rob is a famous Googler. It's
Famous.
interesting because when Rob, yeah, he's always the one Googling. Like you can see his eyes drift off during Dice Shame, and he'll be like, and Joe every time she's like, "You're Googling it, aren't you?" He's like, "What? No." Yeah, I think when Rob has talked about Jack dying, he always says, "I'll play whatever the party wants,
Needs.
like whatever makes sense for the party,"
Sure.
which I think is a really respectable thing. And I think I would probably try to do that, but end up probably just playing something that would make me happy. I find, especially if you're going to play something for a long time, you got to
Mm,
play something that you're really excited about.
yeah.
Which, funnily enough, when Nursal joined, was like my only, you know, uh, thoughts to share. I was just like, hey, just play something you're really excited about, like that you really can do for a long time.
Oh, really? Not please play a healer because our healer just died?
No, I think probably I said we could use a healer, but I think at the end of the day, I've always been like, at the end of the day, play someone that you are going to be excited and comfortable with for a long time. That's always kind of been my. And I think that's why, at least Mari's personality is very similar to like Alex, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
the idea that and Jack similarly too. Like their voices are kind of the same. They don't have to feel like they have to get into character.
Yeah.
Only Doran and Red are the stupid ones for putting on a voice. But yeah, I would lean towards a rogue. But honestly, at this point, I think we would like see, and this is where my tactical mind comes in too, because I think we would need someone, depending on who dies, I suppose. But we need kind of like a heavy hitter upfront barbarian. We need
Mm.
someone to be with Doran to do a little bit more damage,
Interesting.
and we wouldn't need a spellcaster. Like if I was the only one to die, I probably would move up to something up front. Sucks
Interesting.
because I don't really want to. I mean, a paladin or a cleric would be interesting too.
It's a sad
Paladins,
question, admittedly.
which one?
It's a sad question, admittedly, is all I was saying.
No, not at all. No, I mean, yeah, I have many outs for red in case that happens. That I don't feel bad about the way that he would leave the cast, because I don't think he would leave the show in that way. You know what I mean? Like it's different again. Like Kraloth left the show, so there's just no way that we'd ever have him back.
Mm-hmm.
There's no he doesn't want anything to do with anything. So, but versus like me, like Red, whether he gets
Offed.
put into a well, it's funny because there's like a ring of mind shielding that Jack has, and when the wearer dies, their mind goes into the ring. So there's like 150 ways that a character could die but still be a part of the show, you know?
Mm.
Yeah, I played a cleric and a paladin before, and I did like them both. Ultimately, I think I would argue that paladin is like the prestige D&D class. Like it's the
Interesting.
class to play in D&D. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. To me, it feels like D&D is built around a paladin. Like the way they're honor bound and lawful and have magic, but also have martial. They're just like the kind of and there's something kind of kitschy about that in my mind in a cool way. Like
Mm.
this idea of playing I played a dragonborn paladin once that I really liked.
Yeah, that's extra D&D for sure.
Yeah, three of my favorite characters, because Joe and I used to play games before Dice Shame. We're just like the two of us by a crackling fire, like a campfire. We'd go camping and we would
Oh,
just
that's
play it.
awesome, actually.
Oh yeah, she would run me through like Curse of Strahd, and I would play three characters because you can't have you can't play one character in Curse of Strahd. You need a party.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a dragonborn paladin, and I had a changeling bard, which was also one of my favorite characters, and then I had an Eladrin elf archer,
Fun.
but she was an arcane archer, which I think is technically a fighter class. So
Oh, yeah, interesting.
yeah, and then I've also played a cleric named Graham Hereward in one of our other things, and though I liked all those, I really hate monks and I really hate sorcerers and wizards. I don't think I'd ever play any of those.
Monks are
Was
monks are a
that
thing for sure. I
you?
mean,
Just I heard monk.
oh, yeah, my mic is selective. Uh monks are a thing for sure. I mean, I've mostly GM'd, but ugh, monks are it's so hard to get a player to like playing a monk without really changing all combat to be very suited for a monk in my mind.
Well, and that's, I mean, to me, monk is so synonymous with like a character type. Like you can't,
Yeah.
I can't divorce the idea of like a monk as a character and a monk as like a class. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like to me, they're so bound together that I just, like I can picture Aragorn the Ranger and I can picture Red the Ranger, and they're somehow the same class. But I can't
Yeah.
picture two. And I know you can, but it's just in my mind, it's too descriptive. And I'm not crazy about like a punching monk anyway, like
Mhm.
on its face. So it's just not appealing to me at all.
No, yeah. No, it's not. Great. I'm glad we agree. Monks suck. Uh, I think that's all I have, Harlan.
No, no.
Well, here's
I
a
was
little
ready to answer
one.
all the secrets. Oh, do it. Yes.
Is there anything you wish people would notice about your character? Any question you'd wish I'd ask? And this is not in a guilt trippy, like, kind of way, just in a
That you'd wish I
curiosity.
that?
I don't know.
Or that, oh, I see. Right, right.
No, no, no,
Okay.
that I would ask you about your character. Like, what do you think is something that goes unnoticed about your character, maybe? And we might have already said it, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I think I sort of touched on some of the stuff, but I'm not even worried about that, honestly, in terms of like stuff that I think Red needs more limelight for. Like I think Red talks the most, hands down. Like I'm
Mm-hmm.
not worried about his screen time. And in terms of his like arcs and the things that could be asked to give him more screen time, I'm not worried about that either. Because again, purposefully stretching him out, making him kind of feel more like a backbone than just a than just a visitor, which I think is important to have for any show, to
Mm-hmm.
have characters that feel perennial, to kind of feel like they're going to be there for as long as they can be. So I'm not too worried about Red not being asked the right questions. He
Sure.
plays his role perfectly.
Yeah.
In terms of me being asked the right questions now, wow, that's a whole. No, I'm just kidding. Questions are fantastic. I'm trying to rack my brain and think if there's anything about the production side or the behind the scenes that I think you would find fascinating or interesting at least.
Mostly everything.
Yeah, well, and I can't. I mean, we touched on how it gets produced and how we record it and how we put it all together and how we release it and all that kind of stuff. And we talked about where we want to go in the future and how we want to grow and all that kind of fun, exciting stuff.
It's true.
What are some of your moments that you love about Red? Like, what are your primo Red moments that jump to mind?
Oh, that's not fair. I have to prepare notes for that.
Yeah.
Um,
Which is one that comes to mind? I don't know.
well, I probably already talked about it on the Red stream a while back, but I mean,
I don't remember if I watched that one. So,
I don't think you did. In fact, you were sad that you missed it, so I made sure that the Red stream was last so that you could have a lot of build up. Uh,
ah,
yeah. Is that how you spell delicious? That's not how you spell delicious.
delicious. Oh, I don't know. I'm the worst at that.
Chat,
Delicious.
how do you spell delicious? Rob,
D
how do you
E
spell
L
delicious?
I C I O U S.
IOUS. Okay.
IOUS.
I think
Yeah, you got it right.
I mean one of my favorite scenes from Red was his you said it already, but like his vicious attack against the hunger corrupted kid. I thought
Mm.
was such a like Red and Jack don't get along that often, and they obviously care about each other. And I feel like Red often tries to do his own thing, but also tries to accommodate Jack's very, maybe some would call it black and white kind of morality. Uh, and I thought it was just like a. I know that Red. I'm not articulating well. Give me a second.
Take your time.
I
We can
think,
listen. If you want to lay in on how wrong Jack is, I am all for it. Don't worry. I'm here.
yeah. So Jack sucks, and no, I'm just kidding. Um, Red. I think that it was such a cool scene of like Red because deep down in combat, Red and Jack do protect each. Mostly Red protects Jack, but Red and Jack do clearly like want the other to live, and fight for each other. So it's very. I always find it very interesting, the dynamic that Red and Jack have outside of combat, which is kind of combative and like I would shoot myself rather than admit that I care about you for both of them. But in
Yeah.
combat, especially in that moment when Jack was getting his head slammed against the wall and Red just went feral with like
Mm.
anger and like defense and like ripping this kid to shreds even when Jack had already escaped. It was like part of it was more about like Red's character of like a a a killer or a hunter or whatever, but I also thought it was like this really interesting of like
He's my friend. I can make fun of him. I can destroy. Yeah. No, it's true. He was being
yeah.
very protective. And I do think he's protective like that. Like, I think, Red grew up in a pack of rascally kids and, he was the
Mhm.
outcast of all of them. He knows what it feels like to be different and knows what it feels like to be, you know, man, to be like the runt of the litter, so
Yeah.
to speak. It's interesting. I think that might be part of the reason why he gets really frustrated by Jack at times,
Hmm.
because Jack is the antithesis of that. He like it's so funny because like Jack talks about himself as like I was weird. I just played in the dirt and I'm the archaeologist. It's like, dude, you're a rich fucking elf from Waterdeep. Like it's like the character in the movie that's like, like, oh man, I have it so
It's the nerdy girl that takes off her glasses and suddenly she's hot now.
yeah, but like,
She
you
was
know what I
always
mean?
kind of
Like,
hot though.
yeah, well, that's what I mean. Like, there's this idea of like Jack being this like outcast with so like there's so many little lines in there where he's like, it's just money. Like I remember one time he bought the house for fucking Humprat or the deed or something. He was like, it's just money. And he was like, yeah, I own it now, or whatever. It was like it's not just money for us. Red's got nothing. He came here from Mazdaca. He doesn't have any of that kind of stuff. And like, yeah, well, my dad bought the bar in Kieran, or Torrens or whatever. And I think there's something Red says, and I think it might be the end of season one, where, or maybe it was season two, where they got into it again, and Red said something like, "You got a whole life outside of this. Like when this is over, when this adventure's done, you just go back to doing whatever you want, or
Hmm.
playing in the dirt, or being a fucking rich kid that can go live in Silvery Moon or Waterdeep and have a house for you in both places and a bar with your boyfriend and
Yeah.
spells out the ass and friends all over the world and like just like so much. And like when this is over for us, this is like the most important thing we're ever going to do. And then like where will Red go after? Like maybe the Humprat household if if Jack lets him, maybe he'd be on the street. And like that's it's like a kind of a sad thing when you think about it. And it's interesting because I feel like Jack is such a privileged character,
Yeah.
but the way he's presented, and I think Rob plays him so sympathetically that I think when you're in there and you're on the journey with him, you're really like feeling for him because you're from the perspective of that. You're sitting there with this elf and you're hearing his, heart breaking for his boyfriend, and you know, but so many of their arguments and his perspective are from such a position
Oh
of
yeah.
privilege. I remember early on when Jack would like wrap the dog tags of the Knights of the Eternal Order, like appropriating them around his like magic ball. And I always thought that was such an interesting idea where you have this Kraloth, this 1,000-year-old fighter who we will learn very shortly, gave so much of himself to earn the right to call himself an Eternal Order, and then you got this elf from Waterdeep taking the tags and calling himself a Knight of the Eternal Order, and like brandishing them in battle. Like what? You know what I mean? Like how weird is that of an image?
I mean, Kraloth did give him those tags.
But that's what I mean. Like I don't mean to say like it was a wrong thing to do, but it would have been so fascinating to be like, well, hold on, what are you like? I would have loved for Justin to be like, well, you're not really a knight, just to kind of see how an
Jack would
elf,
respond.
how Jack would confront that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Is a really, it's not necessarily a good place to play because there's not a lot of good feelings, but it
Hmm.
would be really interesting to have that put in Jack's face and see Jack react because I think very often it misses, it narrowly misses kind of the main story. Like we get close to an idea of that, but then it kind of gets deviated by something else that's going on. And I would love to see that part of Jack being like
Acknowledged.
questioned, confronted. Yeah,
Yeah.
interesting.
No, I don't love Jack because he's a good guy. Don't get me wrong.
Well, he is a good guy. He's not. I mean, he's not
He's
a
not a
bad guy.
bad guy, but he's not
All of
a
them are good and
perfect
bad.
guy.
Hmm.
uh yeah, that's really interesting.
As good as a ginger can be. Just teasing.
This is perfect. I have Harlan on the Ginger Jack agenda. Perfect, perfect. My agenda spreads. Uh Joe is asking some questions in chat. I'm very sorry, chat. I usually pay more attention, but it's pretty hard when you're talking to Harlan Guthrie. Uh,
drawing is fantastic, by the way. It's so good.
Thank you. I really love the hand in somebody else's face is
It's
so
really good.
brother fighting to me.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I love it. No, it's really good. I love the action in the scene. It feels really like, I love when scenes show the action that defines the characters. You know what I
Thank
mean?
you.
Like you don't need to know Dice Shame to look at this and understand their personalities almost to a T. You know what I mean? Like even the way Mari's kind of like, I don't really want to be in this, but I'm doing it because it has to be done.
Yeah.
Jack being like almost like a experienced face, like, oh my God, I know this. Red like being like, I want it though.
Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. We have to, or I mean we don't have to, but it'd be
No, we have to.
fun.
I'll go get Red. You can ask me Joe's questions as Red. Give me 1 second. Let me go get
Okay, for sure.
it.
One of these is gonna be really
Party
hard.
time. Hey, stuff. How's it going?
Oh my God. Hi Red. I'm such a big fan.
Oh,
Um,
I'm such a big fan. Listen, your art is absolutely wonderful. I can't believe we got so lucky to have somebody like a. Yeah, 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 yeah. Sorry, Harlan's trying to rush me along. All right, what are the questions? Come on, I got some good answers, I'm sure.
oh my God, I don't know if I can do this because this is making me too happy and my heart is racing.
Oh, really? Red brings joy to everybody. That's my whole deal.
Yeah,
I
wow.
remember standing on that bridge with Kraloth when he was looking at me. Anyway, we don't worry about him. Now go ahead. I'll just relax here. I'm going to throw my feet up in this chair.
Okay.
Comfy. Are you eating this? No? Oh, I'm going to eat this. Go ahead.
Okay. Uh, Joe asks, I don't know if you've heard of Joe. She's pretty great.
Oh,
Uh,
she's great.
yeah, she's great. Do you do you regret anything about playing Red or making the show? That's very
Hey,
weird
Red
to
is
ask Red.
wonderful. I totally get it. Do I? No, look, Red is the only thing I want to be. I couldn't be anything else. Look at me. I'm all colored and fuzzy and perfect in the way I am. No, couldn't be anything different. Does Harlan regret making this show? Let me ask him 1 second. Hey, do you regret making the show? What? Do you regret making the show? Is that a question for me? Yeah. What show? My show. The show that I'm on. No, what are you giving me a thumb? No, I don't think he does. I think he's happy. I think he was in the bathroom.
Um, Harlan slash Red, this means the world to me. This is amazing. Red, what magic item do you want most of all?
Oh, I'll tell you right now. But the problem is, if I say it, I'm worried that I won't get it.
No, 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 no,
Should
no. We won't tell Joe. Joe's not listening.
should I
I
be honest?
promise.
Should I be real honest?
Yeah, yeah.
All right, listen. When I was in Chasloth the Arghorn's little house, remember with the silver dragon, the
Mm-hmm.
smelly one?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, I was leafing through some books while I was waiting for Jack to talk or whatever the heck. Anyway, I saw a magic item, and I read the description, and it sounded probably the coolest I've ever seen. It was called an immovable rod.
That's a
Listen to
good
this.
item.
It's got a button on it,
Yeah.
and if you press it, it doesn't move. Don't say anything to anybody. But it's the magic item I probably want the most. I
Yeah.
could do so many fun things with it.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. You could
Yeah,
stop a
but that's
dragon in its
basically not.
tracks.
I
Yeah.
could stop so many things. Think of all the things I could hang off of.
Yeah. Oh my
And I could put
gosh.
my clothes on it. I could hang my bag on it at night. Oh, the ideas get me too excited.
Amazing.
But don't tell her.
Okay, I won't. I won't.
Good.
Red, let's say that Jack and you are brothers. Who's the older one?
Oh, we are brothers. Look, if Jack and I were really, really blood brothers, besides him being a little hairier,
Yeah.
I think we'd have to be twins, wouldn't we?
That's
Who
an
would be the
interesting
older
take.
brother? I mean, yeah, we gotta be, I mean, I think the idea is, I mean, he's got the older brother energy, but I feel like he gets just as
He's projecting.
petulant at
Yeah.
times, and he's projecting it. I love the old guy. He's a goofball, really. He's a sweetheart.
Would you say that to his face?
100%. I've
Oh,
said it to a
nice.
million times. Listen, the thing about me is I'm hot and cold, Times I'll talk to Jack and he just totally gets me. He really understands the greater thing. And frankly, if I can be honest, as of late, I think he's been a little bit more, how can I say this? Easygoing or less of a dick. One of those two.
Less of a
Probably easy.
prick, for sure.
That's the one. I don't know, like ever since he opened that box and he got the big explosion, he got flown against the tree, and I was really pissed off at him. But also, I found him to be a little bit more, I don't know, maybe less taking it seriously, which I appreciate. Because at the end of the day, it's all a fucking joke anyway. It's a bit of a game, a little bit of having fun. That's all I really want.
Wow, you sound like you worship a Kralos, other god.
Oh, thank you. I am done with all that. Look, I know where I sat with Kraloth, and I'm happy about it. Honestly, it was really great that we got to meet him, but we were just the end of his story, the epilogue. He had a whole life before us, and I'm excited to put it to rest.
Yeah, that's awesome. Um, does chat have any questions for Red? I'm trying to
I'm
think
right
of it.
here, chat, coming live at you.
Yeah.
Is this the chat? This is the yeah, it's over there. What the scrolling pieces of paper? Yeah. Just reading the bottom. Okay, is this a question? It says, "OMG, yes, the climbing." What's the climbing? What's climbing?
Um,
It's the bee, though. Is the bee?
it's
Did you
what you're
just say the
really good
bee?
at, Red. You're really good at
Bee?
climbing. Yeah.
Climbing is there's no bee in climbing. Yes, there is. No, there's a bee. Whatever. It doesn't matter. Favorite food? Oh, my favorite food is Red's beef jerky. There's only one. I'll tell you how I make it too. It's really good. First off, you got to get a nice lean piece of meat. No fat, no marbling, nothing like that. Rabbit works perfect. You cut it up and you want to dry it on a rack for as long as you can. And keep Jack away because he loves my jerky. Then you want to put in a couple mixed spices.
Oh shit.
I use cumin, sometimes a little bit of spicy Mazdakin pepper, something a little smoky, salt, and of course you got to have a little bit of sweetness. So you want to
Nice.
put some sugar on there, probably.
Hell yeah. Is that a real ass recipe?
Absolutely, it's a real ass recipe. Are you kidding?
Nice.
I make it all the time.
Incredible.
Coffee order? I'll take coffee black, I suppose.
Masterkin way, of course. Uh, this is too hard, lol. I feel you, Marimo. Red is just too bright and what a star. What an incredible
Oh,
guest to have on the show.
too kind, too kind. That's not what I was hoping for, but I don't know. Is that all you want from me? Do you want Harlan back? I can get him.
I
What?
don't, I don't. I want to live with Red forever. I just can't think of any
Hey,
questions.
I want to live with you too. That's okay. Look, I'll ask you one question, maybe.
Sure.
Here's a question for you about Dice Shame in general. I think that's the show that we're on. What kind of hope is the end for these characters? Like it's all done. What's your perfect world? Do they all go their separate ways? Do they own a tavern together?
Ah, what a good question, Red. Um, I have a lot of different things in mind, but I hope that they all stay friends and stay in contact. But I don't think that I really think that Doran and his love of dwarven culture, I really see him as like a dwarven, like not necessarily a diplomat because he doesn't have the tongue for it, but like a dwarven something or other going around and making sure that dwarves rise up and kill off the remaining giants because you guys aren't going to kill all the giants, right? So,
Oh yeah, no, you're right. Dole would make a great diploma. He'd be so cool at doing all the things he does and walking
diploma.
around the town. I'd like to come with him too, frankly. I'm not ready
Yeah.
to settle down anytime soon.
Jack, I just want him to like figure himself out. I don't know that I have an end in mind for Jack. He just needs to like commit to a thing. I don't know what
Me
that would
too.
be.
Too
Yeah.
all over the place.
Well, for
Living the
you,
dirt.
Red, personally, I kind of see you as still a wanderer, like popping in on all of them. Popping in on whatever Jack's doing, popping in on whatever Doran's doing, popping in on whatever Mari's doing.
Buddy, let me tell you, me too. I
Yeah,
don't see myself settling down anywhere. I gotta
no,
keep roaming.
that's not in your bones, man. Uh, okay.
And Mari, what about Mari?
Ah, that's the hard one is the thing, is I feel like I'm still learning how Mari operates.
We
I
don't know enough
really,
about Mari.
I think that she's also a wanderer. Maybe you and Mari can wander the Forgotten Realms together.
Yeah, maybe,
Maybe?
maybe,
Or,
maybe.
or maybe she goes back
Hey,
home. I hear
I
her
do have one
sisters are
last
great.
question, actually. I got a real question for you.
Oh, yeah.
No holds bar. Who do you think would win?
In a fight?
All four of us.
This is so crazy, Red, because I don't know if you know about this, but the Invictus stream, which is that other guy Harlan, he did like this whole thing where people could
You do
submit.
an Invictus stream? Yeah, I do. Well, just listen to the question. Okay.
I submitted a prompt as a reward. It's a whole thing, but I submitted a prompt to that guy, the Harlan guy, about them having a PvP fight.
Oh, you're gonna do it? No, I don't know. Maybe. Okay, okay. But who wins in your mind?
That's the thing is I feel like it really depends on the circumstances because if they start
Oh,
really
come
far
on. Look,
apart,
you got 100 gold pieces. You put your money down. Who you betting on?
no, I can't. Okay, if they start really far apart, you win because they would never get close to you and they would all be dead.
All right. And they start up close.
Uh, Probably Mari because
Wrong. I'd still win.
really
Trick
close combat,
question.
Red. You're categorically good at that.
You have no idea how good I am. Here I do. First round, go invisible,
Mm-hmm.
right? Get back to distance. If I can't get back to distance, I have spells at the wazoo. Cast silence, Jack's out of the picture there. Can't do bullshit. Neither
Yeah.
can Mary. Then I pull out my rapier. Wait. I do just as much damage with that stupid thing than I do with my bow. I just don't like to be up close.
Mm-hmm.
Slash, 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 they're down.
What happens if Jack successfully counterspells your silence?
He won't counterspell my silence.
He won't?
He couldn't, because
Oh.
I'd kill him first.
He's first target. He's first to go.
Look, all I know is this. I would kill them all.
Wow. Okay. Incredible. You
It's
know,
true.
traditionally, Red, they don't talk about Rangers as being particularly strong. And
It's not so much strong. It's that I would argue I'm the most tactical out of all of them.
that's fair.
Because you have to factor in the human element. What does that mean? Well, the human element.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. If they're all
And the truth be told is not just maybe the mechanics aren't in my favor, but I'm also the most tactical. I'm the one who knows how to use it.
that's fair. That's fair. Uh yeah. Well, you've convinced me, Red. It's pretty hard to disagree with you. Uh oh. And Rob makes a good point. I don't know if you've heard of this guy, Rob. He says if Red was invisible first, before silence, Jack couldn't see him to counterspell it. So yeah, I guess you're absolutely right, Red. Uh
I just robbed the one oh, you know what? I think a few times I've heard Mari called Jack Rob. I don't know why, but I've heard that.
yeah, it's like a nickname or something or other.
Weird.
Um Okay, I think that's all the questions I have for Red, and that's all the
Oh,
questions
no
that Red
worries.
has for me.
Other than just saying you're doing an amazing job and we appreciate you so much.
Thank
And
you.
no problem. Yeah, I thank you for having me on it. I think you're good to go. That's fine. Oh, thank you. Bye. Okay. Well, that's red, I guess. So I didn't
Yeah.
hear what he said, but there we go.
He was only
Um,
complimentary, I'm sure. Uh,
yeah, probably. Oh, did he ate on my blueberry? Anyway.
I'm so sorry if
Uh,
everybody can hear my Discord going off. I forgot to mute that.
no, I can't.
Perfect, perfect. Okay,
Amazing.
yeah, I mean we've been going for 2 hours, Harlan. I think this is a good place to call it.
I
We've
am
had Red.
more than happy to. This was an absolute blast. Thank you so much for having me on. I love talking about Dice Shame. I love what you're doing. And, like, honestly, the number one thing that helps shows, honestly, is fan art. It is. People see exciting, interesting, clever, kooky fan art, and they go, that's something I want to see. And you are supremely talented.
Thank you.
And I want to encourage as much as I can you to continue feeling like you are being seen and heard and appreciated because you absolutely are.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it helps tremendously for everything that we're doing. So know that you're a huge part of why we're so excited to continue on.
Well, I'm happy to do it. It's super fun, and I'm glad that it feeds back into you guys. That's amazing. Okay. Well, before I start crying, I think we should end the stream. Uh, so is anybody have any less? Well, there's too much of a delay, and I gotta go eat dinner. I'm starving.
Yeah, no worries. Well, thank you to everybody who's watching. Hope you enjoyed Dice Shame. Like Stuff and Such as Stuff and support them any way you can. And again, thank you for having me on.
Yeah, happy to have you. Come back anytime. All right, let's end the stream. Boop
All right.
and boop. Okay. That was freaking awesome, and you're the